confidence interval for a population proportion. A sociologist is studying the prevalence of crime in one major city. In a sample of 225 randomly selected residents, 58 say that they have been victimized by a criminal. Based on a sample, construct a 90% confidence interval for the proportion of all residents in the city who have been victimized by a criminal. Then complete the table below. So we want to find the lower limit and the upper limit. So we have three things given to us here. We have n is 225. Our x is going to be 58. And our confidence interval that we are looking for is 90%. So the first thing we need to do is figure out what z-score goes along with a confidence interval for 90%. So again, this goes back to the normal curve. We want to know what z-score gives us 90% of the under the curve shaded. So we need to figure out what this number is right here. Okay, so it'll be one positive and one negative, but we only need one. If this is 90% on the inside of the curve, that accounts for 10% on the outside. So 100% minus 90% is 10% or 0.10. So we have 0.10 on the outside of the shaded. But since this is symmetric and we got to look at the left and the right, we actually divide that by 2 and get 0.05. So we have 5% over here and 5% over here. So now to find the z-score that goes along with that 5%, because remember our calculator only gives us the area to the right. So our calculator is actually going to give us what this z-score number is right here. Let's jump back over there. So click the Z button and do 0.05 for that 5%, and that should be the z-score that goes along with it. So 1.645. Okay, so draw the picture again real quick here. So we got 90% here. So this is 1.645, and this is negative 1.645. So this will give us a 90% confidence interval because we want to land in there. So basically what we're looking at here is first thing we need to find is the proportion. So the proportion is 58 divided by 225, which is our x over n that we had on the previous slide. So 58 divided by 225, 25778. That is, when we did a sample, we got about 26%. So we want to know, with 90% confidence, if we went and asked everybody, how close to 26% would we be? Okay. So we're going to use the formula, the square root of p times 1 minus p divided by n. So plug this in real quick, or 0.25778 for my p. 1 minus p would be 0.742. Divided by 225, and we're going to do the square root of this number. So let's jump back over to the ALEKS calculator to do that. Before I go on, I'm going to store that z-score because we're going to need that in just a second. So to do this, we do the square root. I'm going to put in parentheses since we have two numbers in our numerator. 0.25777 times 0.74222 in parentheses divided by our n 225. So we have p times 1 minus p divided by n, and we do the square root of all that. So we get this number right here, which is our standard error. To find our margin of error, what we want to actually do is take that times our p-value. So we take that, to find our margin of error, we are going to take that times our z-score that we just have. So I'm going to do times, recall that z-score, and get equal. So this is what they call my margin of error. So my margin of error is 0.04796. Okay, so now with our margin of error, all we have to do is take the proportion plus our margin of error to get the upper limit, and do the proportion minus the margin of error to get the lower limit. So our original proportion, remember, was 0.257778. So we do 0.257778 plus 0.04796. and we do 0.257778 minus 0.04796. This will give us our upper limit and lower limit. Basically, if you wanted just to talk about this with easy numbers real quick, if we round these, let's say 26 and 5%. So we got about 26 and our margin of error is about 5%. So we are looking at 26 plus 5 is 31, 26 minus 5 is 21. If we went and asked everybody whether they have been victimized by a criminal, we would get somewhere between 21 to 31% would say yes. Okay, so that's kind of our rounded numbers here. Let's go put it in the calculators to get the exact numbers. So that's my margin of error. Take our proportion, 0.257778, and there's actually a plus or minus button that will give us both numbers at once because we want to add our margin of error and subtract our margin of error. So if I'm going to hit the plus or minus button, and I'm going to hit recall to get that margin of error. So now we have our proportion plus or minus the margin of error. When I hit enter, it's going to give me two different numbers here. So the first one is 0.21 when I round to 2 decimal places, and the next one is 0.31 when I round to 2 decimal places. So again, we are 90% confident that if we went and asked everybody, it would fall somewhere between 21 and 31% of people would say they've been victimized by a criminal. That is right.